Bryce 7.1 Pro is capable of producing anisotropic reflections, and that's as opposed to the specularity effect, which you've already seen. Presume you've already seen. If you've looked at some of the videos, you'll have already seen it. If not, you can look at the videos and see it. But anisotropic reflection works with premium effects and the blurred reflection. So what I thought I would do is set up a scene, a landscape, to take advantage of this feature. Now, if I switch to the overhead view in Bryce, you see I've got infinite plane and the camera which is facing north. Now, the anisotropic feature is driven by a vector determined by a colour, RGB values providing a different strength of the vector. So orientation of the camera might be significant. The feature's a little bit difficult to get working, let's put it that way. I don't know whether it's buggy, I've not tested it enough, but it can be tricky to get working. So I'll show you which direction the camera is facing in, and then if it's a significant factor, then you can set it at the same. Right, I'm going to create a terrain. Hold the control key down to bring terrain in default grey material. I'm going to edit that terrain, and I'm going to set it to solid and use fractal Mordor, and then generate a sort of spiky landscape, maybe not that spiky, a bit spiky. Just keep regenerating until something comes up that I think is going to be useful. Okay, we'll give this one a go. I'm going to have that'll be facing away from me at the moment, but I can always spin the terrain round. So if I brush that end down so we get to see these things, and I'm going to use eroded and then mounds. You see the mounds appearing. When they start to appear just there, I stop producing the mound. So that's my potential landscape. I'll check out of the terrain lab and then flip it round so the low bit's towards me, and using the overhead view I'm going to scale it up a bit, move it away from the camera, and then arrange for it to be just going underneath the water's edge just there. So let's see how that looks. So that's my terrain. I'm going to increase the amplitude of these a little bit. There we go. Right, and if for speed's sake I'm going to copy and paste these terrains and just distribute them at the back there, so it makes it look like the landscape continues a bit further. I mean, obviously you can build your own landscape up accordingly. It's just to provide, I could mirror those, couldn't I? So if I see, there should be an option here, flip X, see if that's flipped them round so they're not so obviously repeating. Look at that. Right, so bring those forward into collision with these other things. So there's my terrain, and I want a fairly simple gradated sky. Or is that graduated? Anyway, so I'm going to use custom sky settings, set this colour to a darkish blue, set the horizon colour to a sort of a reddy colour. See in the preview here how it's building up, and turn the clouds off, make the fog kind of yellowy mustardy colour, so you can see probably a bit too strong there. I want to go into the Skylab. I can use the thickness control here. Let's see how it looks. Right, you can see the effect of the red in the sky, and I bring the haze in to meet it, then go to the image-based lighting tab. I can generate the sky. I can generate a HDI from the sky, but first I'm going to turn the sun moon off as a visible object. Then it won't include a sun and moon in the backdrop. So you can see I've got a graduated backdrop now. Use sky as backdrop, add to sky. I'm not using it as a light source. I turn the quality down to speed things up, so you can see the effect of that now. Re-enable the sun, come back out the render. So that's given it quite a sort of a sunset appearance. It's combined with the sky and the haze, but I'm going to knock the haze off for now. So you can see the effect of just having the backdrop in there. And if I want it to incorporate the sky colour to make it brighter, then I need to go into here and use sky colour, and that will make it a lot brighter because it's incorporating it with the colour that's already there. So I'm going to knock out some of these so it's not quite, oop, that's made it go a bit too blue. Take the blue down, introduce a bit of green and a bit of red. Let's have a look at that. Try and get it to the level I'm after. Right, to give it sort of an eveningy sort of feel. Sun colour, you hold the Alt key down, we're clicking on the colour that will give you this menu, and then you can set it up. So I'm going to make it orange, and then in the Skylab increase the intensity. So you can see now it's on the landscape there. Move it around to one side, so it's there's some distinct shadow regions. I could have some sun glow colour to change the gradation across the back of the sky. For that I think I'll need the sun as a visible object. Now you can see the glow colours come in there. I'm going to reduce the intensity to 70 and make it a pale blue. So maybe that's a bit strong. I'll make it a darker blue. You can see how it's affecting the colour of the sky there, just to give a bit of a gradient in that direction. I'll move it around a bit. Now I particularly want shadow regions because I'm going to use true ambience to fill in this area, but I want to interact with the haze somewhat, so I'll just see how far the haze is coming forward. It's probably a bit strong, and you can see the horizontal band, which means it needs raising slightly. When you raise it, clouds get turned on, so Alt, click on the little thumbnail there, and you can get rid of the clouds. So back into the Skylab atmosphere tab, I can reduce the thickness, and that'll just have the haze affecting the more distant terrains there. So that gives me some haze effect, but I've still got dark shadows in this foreground region. Right, the material on these terrains. If I use this selector here, I can select all the terrains together and go into the material lab. Right, and I'll select here, and I'm going to use shared mat, so you can pick this material up on bryce5.com. It's a joint material made by Horo and myself, and I'm going to change its settings somewhat. I'm not going to have any ambient in it because the ambient lighting is going to be provided by True Ambience. I'm going to modify this component, so instead of being slope controlled, it's curvature controlled. That's that bottom one here. I'm just going to change the filter slightly, so make the transition a bit sharper. So just put this transition area between the E and the N in component, so put it about there. Curvature control, I'm going to find concave and hard edges, and hopefully this is going to find the valleys in the terrain and make it look like stuff's settled in there. This component providing the snow, and in this section here, this is where the snow is being slope controlled. I'm going to bring a bit more snow in by moving this filter up. You can see this in this preview, the snow's moved further up the bumpy material, and this material I'm going to hold the shift key down to go into this texture library and go into rocks and pick out purple rocks. So rather like that one, it's nice bumpy material. So I think that's all the changes I want to do to the material. Let's see how that looks now. Bit difficult to tell. I think I need a bit more white in this, so I'm going to increase a bit more blue, and then if it gets to be quite intense, then it'll come towards the white end of the spectrum. I just want to see. Oh yeah, I seem to have got some snow in the crevices there, but it's still difficult to judge at the moment because I've still only got the light from the sunlight. So what I'm going to do now, go into the Skylab while I think about it. Sun, moon, shadow softness, and set that to 15, and then I'm going to go into the render options, premium effects. I'll set the raise per pixel down to the 4 for the moment. Soft shadows, because I'm using soft shadows with the sun. True ambience and blurry reflections. I'm going to need that, and then I'm going to set true ambient scattering correction, raise pixel down to 4. Now I should see, when I render this, that some blue being incorporated from the blues in the sky now, so we get a bit more of a light balance. So it's still got the strong orange from the sun, but now some of the blues being filled in, so you can see the snow settling in into the strong crevices. Right, the time has come then to tackle the reflection, which is primarily what this was going to be about. So I select the infinite plane here, go into the material, and I'm going to go no diffuse, set the diffuse colour to black. Right, full reflection, and then if I use metallicity, that will transfer the black onto the reflection. So only at shallow angles of reflection do you get good reflection, and then as you're looking further down on it, so as it's getting closer to the camera, because the angle is steeper, then it will have less reflection. So that should give a nice effect. And also need to set this value here, colour component, to black, and then turn the anisotropic effect up. The specular halo channel here, the value of this, which you press Alt, and you can see that the luminance value that controls the level of blurring. So now we've set the anisotropy, should produce an anisotropic blurring effect, but with this particular value of the specular halo, you'll probably find it'll blur a lot. So I'll just show you how blurry that is. Right, that's a lot of blurriness. To reduce the blurriness to an appropriate level, hold the Alt key down, click on that, and set the luminance. So I'm going to go for 70. Right, and that should be an anisotropic level of blurriness. Right, so how does an anisotropic reflection differ from an ordinary reflection? It should be slightly stretched out. Difficult to judge at the moment. So go into the material again. I'll turn this up so it's more obvious effect. So I'll set it up to 100. And then can you see whether it's stretching out there? I think maybe I'll need higher quality settings as well to show this effect off. It can be quite subtle. Right, it should be as if the things are smeared in the direction of the camera, and so I'll just let that bit render. I think you can start to see the effect now, albeit subtly, and then I'll go to the material again, and I'll just turn anisotropy down to 0, and then render a bit next to it, and you should just see that this is just the general blurriness. So that's general blurriness, whereas this is sort of stretched towards the camera blurriness. So I think I'll leave it set at 100. Now what I want to do is try and get perhaps a bit more light on the snowy areas along this edge, so that it shows up the effect better. So I'll just move the sun around. Oh, it's going to be slow to render now. I'm going to turn the rays per pixel down a bit, so we'll see how this looks. So I want to see what it's look like in the reflection. This darker edge here is a result of the metallicity and mixing the black in, so that was the idea behind that. Right, I might increase the amount of yellow in the sunlight a bit. Let's have a look. Maybe not quite so saturated. Let's have a look how that's going to look then. That's a bit possibly a bit too on the white side now, but it will show up the snow better. I'm torn now. Okay, I'll go for more saturation. I suppose, just think maybe this is a bit too strong on that red colour. Let's see if we can lighten that out. Oh, that's better. Yeah, it's a better balance of colours, I think. Right, so have I got everything set now? I've got my anisotropic reflection set. Go to material, set the anisotropic reflection. Probably going to reduce this down a bit because it's going to take a while to render. I've detected. Let's try 600 for that. So that's going to be my effect. I'm going to narrow the field of view a bit so we can get a bit closer to the coastline. Set the render options. I'll set it up at 64. Let's have a look what the render time's like there. Quite slow, but there's a large reflective area, so it tends to slow things down. So 12 minutes. Okay, right, I shall pause the video here and we'll have a look how that is when it's rendered out. There's the completed render. It's turned out okay. I think you can perceive the anisotropic stretching on that reflection. But what I'm curious now is, well, whether or not it's going to change when I move the camera around. So I'm going to try and change the position of the camera. I'll point it round a bit to one side, and I'm going to lower it somewhat as well, just to see what effect this has on the reflections then. So move things round a bit, as you can see. Probably more of a dramatic camera angle as well, so that might benefit. But what will happen to the reflections in this situation, I don't know yet, whether they'll look alright or whether they will break at that point. I wonder if we should try a different material, just for fun. Okay, let's have a look in the material lab, and we've got in the shared materials, there's another one here called Barren Mountain. We'll give that one a whirl, just for the sake of variety. I'm just thinking, if I go to this terrain, edit the terrain and increase the complexity of it a bit, maybe erode it a bit more, I don't know. See how that looks. Right, give it a render. Difficult to judge until it's rendered out. Let's see. Well, that's okay. I could do with something that was coming down to the water's edge. Now a bit closer to the camera. Okay, let's see what other materials we've got. Right, I've got one of these from the island materials, but I don't know whether they're going to work at this scale or whether I'll have to increase the scale considerably for it to work on that basis. Oh, and they're a lot darker too. Okay, right, I'll get rid of these things, increase the scale quite a bit, and it's going to be in the haze, isn't it? This is a bad idea. Okay, that's in the haze. Actually, I don't look bad. Okay, probably, I don't know, it could look like fog in the mountains there. This sun's probably going to have to be more intense to get away with this effect. I'll take that up to 450. I'm going to reduce the rays per pixel so I can preview this reasonably. Okay, so that's got a bit more light on it, a better scale on it, I think. Want something to fill in these areas, so I'm going to have to drive the transience effect with a bit of light from the HDRI backdrop that's linked in with transience optimization, so that should help fill in those dark regions, but I'm going to have to pump this a little bit higher to get some kind of result, I suspect. Too much. Okay, try 35 there. Right, that looks okay. I'm going to tilt the camera forward a bit so we get a nice symmetry between the sky and the ground. I'm going to increase the sun still further as well. So let's try that. 600 is probably going to be too much. I don't know. The effect of the sun's going to start changing the colours on the terrains. That's not bad. Let's see. I think we could do with a bit more detail on that terrain. I'm going to risk giving it some more mounds and spoiling it, but let's build it up a bit more. Okay, right, we'll give that a go. I think I'm going to move the camera around. I want it to be about 45 degrees, so if there's a problem with the reflections, it should show it up when we have the we'll look at the reflections in the render. So render options, I'm going to take it up. Let's see what it's like at its highest setting. So it's going to probably take a long time as a result of choosing such a high setting. Let's have a look. It is going really slow, that, isn't it? Not good. Probably going to be a patience testing render, this one. 1 hour 36. Okay, right. Well, I'll let that render out and we'll see how that looks then. Well, that's turned out okay, but I'm a little bit disappointed because this is too close in the foreground and the material's not really intended for having such something so close to the camera. It works okay in the distance, but at this range it's looking a bit lumpy. So is there anything I can do about that? Well, I've been thinking about this. I'm going to save this file. I have saved this file. Okay, so I'm going to experiment with instancing lab. Right, I'll create a sphere. I'm not very good with the instancing lab. I always get a bit confused. Right, so I've got a sphere here, and I've got my terrain, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the ground on off to clip it so I can see that there's where this island is that's in the left portion of the view there. So that's the island that I want to do something with. Now I'm going to select the terrain, go instancing, choose the brush that's a sphere, and then this is the zoom control here, and there's a hand that moves it, and I want to zoom in on the island there. So move the control around and zoom in. I want to be in that square. So there's my plane. There's where I want to be. A bit closer yet. Every time I zoom in, it moves it out of the way. Somewhere in here. Oh, don't do that. Right. There's the plane. That's the square I want to do. So I'm going to paint on this bit. Hold the mouse still and press the button once, and then if I check out now, you can see there's the spheres and they've landed. Oh, I need to set the raise per pixel down so I can preview this. Right, they've landed there on the edge of the island, which is what I wanted. Obviously some of them are not needed, so if I can select what I've got to do here, set the spheres. They're grouped in some way. Unnamed. They are grouped, so I'll ungroup them. I might be able to select them then and chip away at the ones that are actually in my field of view. Oops, don't move the terrain. Right, and then I don't need that sphere there. I do need the plane. So move that plane there. Well, actually that's not in my field of view, so I'll leave that there. It might need that for the instancing. These then are then going to convert into trees. That might take a while, depending how many spheres there are there. Okay, and then I'm going to drag them en masse and plant them a bit into the ground, hopefully. Let's have a quick render of what we've got there. So these have now got trees covering up that portion of the island that was a bit too close to the camera. I'm going to push them back a bit so that they're lower to the original terrain, so you can see a bit of the shoreline underneath the edge of them. And then to get them to match the terrain, I'll select the terrain itself, then select the trees. Hold the shift key down there when selecting the trees, and that'll leave the terrain selected. Now if I go into the material lab and then exit, that'll apply the same material to the trees as to the terrain. And then go to the trees, edit them, edit the foliage, and get rid of the ambience that's providing the shoreline effect. Switch them over to the green colour. I'll have the ambience on that, so I've got a mixture, and we'll see how that looks. So that should harmonise the colours with what's already in the scene. That's the idea, so that it's a good match for the rest of the things in this scene. So that's covered up that terrain. That was a bit too bumpy looking. Right, move this down a bit and forward a bit. I've got some trees going into the water, which is a little bit inconvenient. So if I turn the ground back on with this control, go outside and just see if I can select the very lowest ones, so I've not got submerged trees, and then keep shuffling them round a bit, bringing them down to this edge, so I'm covering up the material I'm wanting to hide at this close range. Okay, so having done that and got my trees in position, well, there's some poking out at the top now. Well, that's okay, it won't show. Right, if I edit and copy this and then drop my original scene in, then save, and then edit and paste, that should magically give me my trees in this scene where I've already got it rendered, which means if I set my plop render up over the area which it's going to be, I can just render that small area and it won't take as long. So let's see if that theory works. So this should join seamlessly with my existing render, and I'm just rendering the bit that I've changed. So see if it looks better after that. It's going to take 3/4 of an hour, so I hope it's going to look better after that. Right, I'll pause the video again. So there it is done then, with this bit patched in. You can't really see where the join was thanks to the plot render, and it saved a few, well, probably a couple of hours really. And I suppose that's the end of the tutorial. It got a little bit more involved than I thought it was going to. Mostly it was about this anisotropic reflection, which I think you can see quite clearly in effect here, particularly on this high noise area opposite the trees. And it's also had a bit of instance in lab and true ambience rendering, so a whole hodgepodge of ideas there, something to get your teeth into. Okay then, that's the end of the tutorial.